6:48 a.m. Bathrobe coffee, going cold. Blue and red lights splashing across my backyard, like I'd set off a siren festival for the birds. 2 minutes is what they said. I stole 2 quiet minutes of water after the cutoff, and there I was, with wet slippers and a stunned face, while the HOA president told the deputies I was trespassing on my own grass. Yeah, that happened. And she had no idea the guy with bedhead and a mug used to sign arrest warrants for a living, which is probably why this story ends the way it does. My name is Jonathan Hale. John, if we're sharing a fence line, and after 32 years on the bench, I moved to Cedar Creek Bluffs for tomatoes, porch shade, and a kitchen that turns honey gold at 5 p.m. Nora picked the place because the pecan tree felt like family. The first time the wind moved through it, neighbors brought casseroles. I learned who keeps extra jumper cables. I figured the biggest drama would be whether the high school won on Friday, day 4. I heard trouble before I saw it. The click, click, click of heels on my driveway, and then the perfume cloud. Then a clipboard, like a badge. You print at home, "Welcome to Cedar Creek." "Mr. Hale, we take pride in our standards," she said. Smile tight, eyes colder than the HOA newsletter font. Her name was Madeline Pierce, and she'd already printed violations with my address. Tomatoes, visible from a community path, section 6.4, unauthorized botanical installations. She read like a citation from Mount Sinai. I looked at the fence, looked at the raised beds, looked back at her, and said, "I'd move them, because you pick your battles, and this wasn't the hill, not yet." The walls started talking after that, us. Novak across the street told me she paid $400 for hanging a paper snowman. 6 days early, whispered it like a sin, the Carters got slapped because their little boy's bike leaned where you could see it. If you squinted from the curb, a renter on Oak Ridge pointed at a blue dot on his walkway and said, "That's the approved newspaper spot he got cited for landing 11 inches off." You know what I mean? There's petty, and there's predatory. And this was the second kind. Wearing a polite smile. The red tag on my door was the moment I realized Madeline wasn't playing referee. She was building a scoreboard that only lit up for people she didn't like. Criminal water use, $250 due immediately. It said, criminal water use, like my sprinklers were running a heist. The posted window was off at 6:45 a.m. Mine were set to stop at exactly that, because I'm the kind of man who double-checks a timer. Meanwhile, Madeline had started her morning patrol's runner's short stopwatch, a pace that belonged in an operating room not on my street. Being underestimated is a gift. If you don't waste it, I installed a timestamp camera in the shed, aimed at the controller. It made this soft little whir every morning, like a throat clearing for justice. 6:45 6:45 6:45 day after day. And here's the comedy. Her expensive watch ran fast by 4 minutes in her world. My 6:40 was 6:40 in mine. It was gravity. Meanwhile, that same lens caught the corner of her yard. Her sprinklers rolled to 6:51. Sometimes 6:50 Saturdays. Her husband power washed during quiet hours. Sundays, a pool pump whined at 7:30, like it had a grudge. Same rules, different targets. Guess which house got the ticket? I didn't swing immediately. Not my style. I invited her for coffee. She showed up early, like people do when they need to control the room. I laid out the prints like cards at a table, my cutoff perfect, hers laid in the background, her face flipped through emotions like a slot machine. Confusion, recognition, anger, panic. These are illegal surveillance of HOA officials. Is harassment, she said. Pitch rising. I explained calmly. They were taken on my property or from a public sidewalk. Things anyone could see. She curled her lip. I have authority to interpret our rules, she said, and interpret. Sounded a lot like invent, then she called 911. At my kitchen table and reported me for trespassing on irrigation schedules, which in 3 decades of hearing creative theories was a new sport. The dispatcher asked if I was on her property. She said no. He said, "Civil matter." You could hear the room exhale. Paper bullies multiply by the day. Next came a letter from something called Cedar Creek Legal Affairs, with a shiny logo and a UPS store for a return address. A notice for a mandatory safety evaluation or face community removal. A citation for excessive guest parking, because my daughter left her car from Friday, 7:10 p.m. to Sunday after 8. Madeline counted that as 25 hours by inventing a midnight to midnight rule. So I went to the county recorder and asked for the original covenants. Section 8.2 was plain as daylight. Guest parking permitted up to 2 consecutive hours and 24, not some midnight magic. The paper said one thing, the clipboard said another. I found the accountant on the board. Doug Bruner. He shut his office door like the walls had ears and told me they never voted on half the interpretations he'd been threatened with a business license complaint the last time he pushed back the teacher on the board. Alma Reyes had recorded a call because her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Madeline's voice on that tape was honey over razor wire. If you undermine unity, I will have to write to the superintendent about your conduct. Governance isn't blackmail with stationery, but that's what it sounded like. Patterns come to life when you pin dates to a board. Immigrants, renters, young families, people without time or resources got hit harder and faster. Fines doubled like bad interest. Meanwhile, Madeline's friends threw pool parties, parked golf carts on turf, sailed through untouched selective enforcement. Isn't just ugly. It's a tell, it says. The rules are not neutral. They're a tool. Then came the twist that changed everything. The state corporation registry. The page that makes liars small. I typed in Cedar Creek Bluffs Association, and my coffee went cold. Administrative dissolution, 19 months ago. If a corporation is a person on paper, then this one had been legally dead nearly 2 years, while still collecting dues, issuing fines, filing liens. No authority to elect or punish, only to wind down. I printed that page 3 times because my hands shook. And I don't shake easy. You don't detonate a lie that big by yourself. I called Elaine Porter, our district attorney, a woman who carries flats in her bag because raids don't wait for sensible shoes. We spread my file across her table. Timestamps the covenant, the registry, the fake letterhead. Alma's audio guest parking photos misses. Novak's ledger of checks, she wrote. Like she was paying protection. Elaine exhaled and started naming charges like labels on a shelf wire. Fraud for electronic payments. Mail fraud. For anything. Sent filing false instruments. If liens were recorded, possibly impersonation. If she presented as a public official, she called her investigator. Said the words, asset freeze in a tone. Bankers Respect said we'd secure the board members. Then added the IRS and the State Consumer Fraud Unit. Because sunlight and subpoenas make a great team. Madeline didn't slow down. She escalated someone. Spray painted my cameras and clipped a cable at 3:12 a.m. 2 hours later, I got a 500 notice for non-functioning security equipment. I'd left a backup in the birdhouse. The footage showed her husband stepping through my beds with wire cutters. I called a detective I swore in years ago. He watched the video and said quietly, "Judge, this isn't governance. It's a racket." Then a process server delivered a restraining order with a case number and a judge's name. Small problem, that judge retired a decade back and died 5 years ago. I called Elaine. She didn't curse, but she blinked hard. Good. "Every new forgery is one more knot," she said. We set the clock for Monday 9 a.m. The precise moment Madeline had announced an emergency HOA meeting with thick cardstock and invented SEALs agents would be in the hall. The community would be in the room. I'd say one sentence and the truth would have to stand by itself. In the meantime, she papered doors with flyers, calling me a corrupt ex-judge, using connections to terrorize leadership. A hotline that connected to her voice pitched half an octave lower. Sunday, she staged a rally with slides of my house and called my cameras. Illegal surveillance apparatus, she held up affidavits, supposedly signed by neighbors. I knew like family, the signatures were wrong. The grammar was wrong. The arrogance was perfect. Monday morning smelled like burnt coffee and floor wax. Folding chairs clacked like teeth. More than 100 people stuffed into a room built for 80. Madeline walked to the podium in a blazer sharp enough to shave and said the line bullies love. Some individuals think their former positions put them above community law. The projector threw my face across cinder block. Before we proceed with emergency measures, Mr. Hale will apologize. I stood without raising my voice, held up a printout according to the state registry. The Cedar Creek Bluffs Association was dissolved 19 months ago, legally dead. Every fine, every lien, every threat since then has been a fraud. The room didn't gasp so much as empty itself of air. Phones appeared, fingers searched, murmurs swelled misses. Novak stood and said, "You took 2 for $12 from me over decorations?" And a snowman, the Carter's kid, whispered to his mom, "She makes us hide our chalk." People are patient until patience makes them feel foolish. Then they're volcanic. Madeline slammed a gavel, shouted lies, dialed the state police, and the doors opened before the call connected. Detectives, a pair of agents in windbreakers, a choreography of calm. The lead agent stepped up and said in a voice that didn't need volume, "Ms. Pierce, you're under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, filing false instruments, and operating a dissolved corporation for profit. You have the right to remain silent." And then came that sound, small but final. The click that tells you a chapter is over. People ask if it felt good. They want fireworks. I felt relief like a splinter sliding out. Then a sadness for what we had to become. To get here, a neighborhood should be casseroles and jumper cables, not certified letters and stopwatches. Rules can keep the place decent, sure. But the line between standards and control gets crossed quietly. One polite thread at a time, and if the person drawing the line sketches themselves a crown, you have to check the paper under the pen. Not because you want to fight, but because home is where people should exhale. If this hits a nerve, start simple. Read the original covenant at the county, not the stapled summary. Look up your association. On the state registry, is it active? Are elections real? Ask for financials. With a calm voice and a notebook ready if the response is threats. Dressed up as civility, write it down. Patterns are quiet until they're not. And if you're on a board, doing it right. Say so in public, show people what healthy looks like. Now tell me what you think. Did I push too hard or exactly hard enough? Where is the line between standards and control in a neighborhood like yours are? We cheering justice or just glad the noise stopped? Take your story, your receipts, if you've got them. And if this helped, hit subscribe, tap like so it reaches the next person. Staring at a red tag, ring the bell. If you want the follow-up about a contractor who tried to hustle a Marine with a bad knee and ran into a wall of receipts, your turn. And please tell me where you're watching from. You know what I mean.